Almost every car today shares the exact same basic concept: cylinders, pistons, and a crankshaft. But back in the 20th century, automotive engineers experimented with some genuinely wild ideas to get these machines moving. We're talking about engines that completely rotated around themselves, others literally ripped out of helicopters, and even a car powered by a real-life jet engine. Here are 12 of the weirdest car engines ever built and actually tested on the road. 1. The Tucker 48 helicopter engine. When Preston Tucker's engineers failed to develop their original ambitious engine for the Tucker 48, they had to scramble for a quick alternative. They landed on the Franklin Flat 6, an air-cooled engine originally designed to power the rotor of the famous Bell helicopter. Tucker's engineers completely converted it to water cooling and heavily modified it to fit the rear of the car. It produced solid power for its time and proved its reliability during a brutal test where it ran continuously for 150 hours at maximum speed without skipping a beat. 2. The Ceseda V16. This Italian supercar from the 1990s carried a shocking secret. Its engine, which looked like a genuine 16-cylinder V16, was actually two V8 engines mashed together around a single central timing case. This clever trick allowed them to build a massive 6.0-liter engine without having to design an entirely new cylinder block from scratch, and it gave the car a hysterical, unforgettable exhaust note. Even after the trick was discovered, the engine performed beautifully, and today it's a rare masterpiece that classic car collectors fight over. 3. The Adams Farwell 5-cylinder rotary. This is an insanely rare American car from the early 1900s that borrowed an idea straight out of aviation, the rotary engine. It featured 5 cylinders arranged radially that actually spun entirely around a fixed crankshaft inside the car. Because of the incredible balance of the rotating parts, this design gave the car way less vibration than other engines of its era, and it was known for running strangely quiet for its time. However, the extreme complexity and high cost of manufacturing meant production was very limited before the company disappeared completely. 4. The BRM H16 in the Lotus 43. In a desperate attempt to find ultimate speed in Formula One, BRM built a 16-cylinder engine in an H layout. Practically speaking, they took 2 flat 8 engines, stacked them on top of each other, linked them with an incredibly complex gear train, and shoved it into a Lotus 43 race car. In theory, this meant massive power in a relatively compact size. But the reality? The insane excess weight and the absolute nightmare of trying to maintain it quickly in the pits turned this engine into one of the most famous technical failures in F1 history, even though it did manage to win exactly one race, mostly thanks to sheer driver skill, not the engine itself. 5. The Wankel rotary engine. Instead of pistons pumping up and down, Felix Wankel designed a triangular rotor that spun inside an oval-shaped housing, creating 3 separate combustion chambers in just one single revolution. The result was a lightweight engine with exceptionally smooth power delivery and way fewer moving parts than a traditional engine. The German company NSU was the first to put it in a production car with the RA80, and later Mazda made it legendary in iconic models like the Cosmo and the RX-7. However, it was plagued by 2 major issues for its entire lifespan: notorious apex seal leaks and terrible gas mileage. 6. The Knight sleeve valve engine. Instead of using traditional poppet valves pushed open by a camshaft, this design used 2 sliding metal sleeves inside the cylinder itself. These sleeves would slide to expose the intake and exhaust ports at the exact right time, with zero traditional valves required. Luxury brands like Mercedes Knight, Willys Knight, and French automakers Panhard and Voisin loved this engine because it was remarkably quiet compared to the clattering metal valves of the day. The catch? It was an absolute oil guzzler. The sliding sleeves needed constant lubrication, which eventually caused the design to fade away as traditional valve engines got better. 7. The Rover Jet 1 turbine. In the 1950s, the Rover automaker took a literal gas turbine jet engine and mounted it inside a normal car chassis, creating the world's very first turbine-powered car. On paper, the idea was incredibly tempting: way fewer moving parts than a piston engine, and the ability to run on almost any combustible liquid, from regular gasoline to vegetable oil. But the insane fuel consumption, the scorching heat of the exhaust, and massive throttle lag made the concept completely impractical for daily driving. 8. The Chrysler Turbine Car. Years after Rover's experiment, the American automaker Chrysler took it a massive step further. They built 50 real, fully functional turbine cars and handed them over to actual families to test drive for months in everyday conditions. The car ran incredibly smooth, with practically zero vibration, and as PR stunts proved at the time, it could run on diesel, peanut oil, or even French perfume. But Chrysler eventually realized that the massive cost and the difficulty of mass-producing the engine made it commercially impossible. So they recalled all the cars and crushed almost every single one of them. 9. The high-revving Panhard Dyna Flat Twin. This was a tiny French engine with just two opposed air-cooled cylinders. But what made it special was that it used a crankshaft supported by roller bearings instead of standard plain bearings, along with a hemispherical cylinder head. This setup allowed it to safely rev to incredibly high speeds, something completely unheard of for such a tiny engine in its era. This brilliant design allowed the little Panhard Dyna cars to outrun vehicles with much larger engines, even though maintaining this complex little motor required some very specialized technical skills. 10. The Saab 3-cylinder two-stroke. While most of the automotive world relied on the four-stroke cycle, Sweden's Saab took a totally different path for decades, using a bizarre little 3-cylinder engine that ran on a two-stroke system. It was mechanically simpler, significantly lighter, and gave the car a totally unique sound, almost like a popping motorcycle. Because two-stroke engines rely on oil mixed directly into the fuel for lubrication, Saab had to equip these cars with a crucial freewheel mechanism. This allowed the car to coast without engine braking when you took your foot off the gas, preventing the engine from literally melting down due to oil starvation during deceleration. Thanks to its ultra-light weight, this motor led Saab to historic victories in ice and snow rally racing. But the fatal flaw was the thick, choking blue smoke from the burning oil, plus heavy fuel consumption. It just couldn't survive strict new emissions laws, forcing Saab to finally abandon it for traditional four-stroke engines by the late 1960s. 11. The Citroën GS B-Rotor. This was the French take on the Wankel idea, but utilizing two rotors instead of one, which Citroën dropped into a mid-size family car in 1973. The concept provided mind-blowing ride smoothness and a silky quiet sound that was completely unheard of for a car of its size. But its absolutely horrific gas mileage collided perfectly with the 1973 global oil crisis, turning the car into a total commercial disaster. Citroën actually had to buy back most of the sold units from their customers and completely destroy them just to avoid the massive future costs of supplying spare parts. 12. The Lancia Narrow Angle V4. Instead of a V engine with a wide angle between the two cylinder banks, engineers at Italy's Lancia designed a V engine with an incredibly narrow angle, just a few degrees between the banks. This allowed them to use one single shared cylinder head for both banks instead of two separate ones. It drastically shortened the overall length of the engine, making it look almost like an inline engine from the outside, despite actually being a V4. This brilliant packaging gave cars like the Lancia Fulvia much better weight distribution and balance than anything else in its class. Every single one of these 12 engines was a bold bet on a concept that completely strayed from the traditional path of how to power a car. Some found success for a while, and others ended in commercial disaster or as clever marketing stunts. But they all remind us that sometimes the weirdest ideas are exactly what pushes the entire industry forward. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button to join us as we uncover even more of the weirdest inventions that shaped or almost shaped the automotive world as we know it.